Where else would you see three immaculate 1965 Mustangs, a decrepit vet, a chilling Charger, and a lawnmower monster truck drag race? Motor Mania at the O'Reilly Auto Expo, of course. Welcome to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Auto Expo here at the Bristol Motor Speedway, Bristol, Tennessee, with our first contender in the OPG Stock Class. Here's Big Daddy Don Garland.
1951 Henry J. You just don't see them around because most of them were used for drag cars, and they were used for drag cars before small block Chevys. Most of them had Oldsmobiles and Cadillac engines in them, but this one's got a 6-cylinder engine, which is very unusual because most I ever saw had 4-cylinder engines. Let's talk to the owner and find out what is the deal here.
Well, they made the cars in 2 or 3 different versions. You could get a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder with overdrive or without. And this one is a 6-cylinder without overdrive. And the 6-cylinder with overdrive, it was a pretty powerful car for what back in its days.
How did you come by this one?
Well, I started collecting Henry J's a couple of years ago, and right now my collection's grown. I've got 12 Henry J's and 2 Allstates.
That's why I can't find any. You got them all.
Well, I'm trying to corner the market on them. I really like the cars. My dad said if I'd been around when they was in business, they'd still be in business. I'm actually building a Henry J and going to put a Hemi in it, like an old gasser car for the highway.
You'll have a lot of fun with that. I guess about the only thing you got modified on here is the wheels.
Yeah, I put 17-inch Torque Trust 2 wheels on it. Everything else is stock.
You know, looking at the interior, the alligator hide is all original. They did replace the cloth, but all the dash and everything else is stock. But you know, it's a beautiful little car. Look at all the beautiful lines and the little tail fins and everything. It was a car that was actually ahead of its time. Very smooth lines, very streamlined. You know, it just has a really nice look. And I guess that's one reason the drag guys really liked them, because they could put their hot rod motor in them, and it had a real slick aerodynamic type car. This is nice of Roger, though, that he's got them saved back. 12 of them he says he's got. Boy, I'll tell you, that's really a stash.
1968, that's when Chrysler Corporation decided that they were going to join the muscle car wars. What did they do? They took a Belvedere, their lightweight B-body. It was a post car, very little insulation, and they put their factory hot rod engine, a 383. As a matter of fact, you could even get the big guy, the Hemi, in it. They joined that muscle car revolution in a big way. And here's somebody that bought one of these cars in 1968, sold it, and 30 years from the time he originally bought it, it's back in the family.
I bought the car new and I sold it in 1982. And the guy changed the color, took the top off of it. I kept the original engine, put a 440 in it, and all I ever dreamed of was having a Hemi engine, so I got a chance to buy one in the 80s, and I bought it, put it up, and then this guy called me like 5 years ago. He'd had the car 19 years, wanted to know if I wanted to buy it back, and it was just a no-brainer.
Is it exactly where you want it now, or is there more to do?
The only thing we're putting a Dana rear end under it. It's ready to go. We just hadn't stopped long enough here in this show season to do it.
The big guy we talked about in this 1968 Roadrunner was a Hemi. This is a Hemi. It has some aftermarket valve covers, but it still has the 2 4-barrel carburetors. There were no power accessories, no power steering, no power brakes. This was made for one thing, to go straight down the racetrack. When Chrysler went factory muscle car, this was the biggest you could get in their early years, and this one found a good home and then refound that same home.
You know, every so often the factory makes a car which ends up being a classic. And in the case of Ford, off the top of my head, I think 32 Ford, 40 Ford, and the 65 Mustang. Actually, it was a 64 and a half, a 65, and a 66 were all pretty much identical. With the 64 and a half difference being it had a generator and it was 265 cubic inches, whereas the 65 and the 66 had alternators and were 289s. Now this is a 64 and a half, and this pretty much just tells you what it is that made them so nice. They were just really had some classic lines about them, and they just grew on you. I had one when they were brand new, and I have them today. The convertible demands the most money. The coupes are pretty much in demand, but these cars, like you see right here, run in the neighborhood of anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000, depending upon the condition. All in all, this is a real clean one, a good example of an era that's gone. And if you happen to have one of these that you save back, you're one lucky person.
We'll meet more lucky people, and we'll have a look at the chicken coop. That all coming up next as the O'Reilly Auto Expo continues from Bristol Motor Speedway. The O'Reilly Auto Expo and Motor Mania brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, home of the professional parts people. By Summit Racing Equipment, the world's speed shop. And by Hallmark. Hallmark, built strong for the way you work and play.
Well, every once in a while you find a really nice Charger. You know, I'm kind of partial to Chrysler anyway, but this was the era, 1970, that I was really into these kind of cars. And this looks like an exceptionally nice 440 six-pack. It looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor, but I'm sure it was restored. So let's talk to the guy that did the job.
I found it in Granville, Tennessee in 1980, and I gave $75 for it. Had a chicken coop on top of it, and had more clothes in it than a yard sale.
Is it a 4-speed?
4-speed with a Dana 60 in it.
Oh, was a Dana 60 in this car when you bought it?
Mm-hmm. Has what they call Super Track Pack, which came with a bigger radiator, bigger battery, Hemi 4-speed, and the Dana rear end. It's also an export car. It was ordered overseas and never left the country. But when the man came back from service, it was waiting for him in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay, here comes the $64 question. What kind of value do you place on a rare piece like this?
To me, it's probably worth, I got about $30,000 in materials in it and about 2,000 hours of my time in it. And it took me 4 years, 11 months to do.
So it's well worth over $100,000 to you.
Yes, I wouldn't take anything for it. I want to enjoy it now.
Here's something else that's interesting. See this little 122 that's on that valve cover? That means this 440 was supposed to be a 6-pack motor. Over here we see this little 0 on this valve cover. That means this engine was destined to be hooked to a 4-speed. And then I want to call your attention to this interior. He said he made this himself. I mean, this is very, very professional. I would not know that this wasn't done by one of the finest trim shops around. What a beautiful job on the interior. Bill has done one fantastic job on this car, and I was so happy to hear him say that he didn't want to sell it. He wanted to drive it and enjoy it and wear it out the second time.
The definition of a pony car, how about a 1965 Mustang GT Fastback, 289 4-barrel 4-speed car. Pat Fox, how long have you had this beauty?
I bought this beauty new. I've had it 41 years, and 3 years ago we had it restored, brought it back. So I've been doubly blessed. I've had a brand new car twice in the same car.
Okay. When you restored it, what did you have to do to the engine?
Well, we rebuilt the engine. We bored it out a little and put a mile cam in it, and so it kind of rumbles a little bit more than it used to, and it's always a pretty good runner anyway. So we just thought, you know, since we had it down, we'd just do it all at the time. So
the interior now is redone, probably even a little nicer than when it started.
Absolutely, it's nicer. The paint's nicer. You know,
it's a member of the family. It's one of the kids.
Yeah, it's been a lot less trouble than some of them.
You're going to keep it as long as possible?
Yes, as long as I possibly can. I'm kind of looking at a new 2000, well, I like to have a 2005, so it could be a little sister to this one, but I haven't found exactly the one I want yet.
Enough room in the garage to put them side by side?
If I run my husband out.
The rally wheels, which add so much to these machines, they're the best looking rally wheels I think that you could find. The GT badging, and we come back and look at the interior. It is somewhat Spartan. There's no console. You have the seats that are in a Naga hide. One of the things that you can see on the steering column, it has the rally pack. That tachometer engaging, when you were getting it from the factory, it was under $40. You try and find those now, and they're getting 3 figures in the area of $600 to $700. It was light, it was quick. With the dual exhaust, it rumbled fairly well. About the only thing people could have an issue with was the early Mustangs. When you were going on a long trip, you had to pack light.
You know, every once in a while you see a Corvette that's been restored or one that's been redone. It was a really nice car to start with, and it really turned out well. Well, this one has really turned out well, but it wasn't all that nice to start with. And I'd like to talk to the guy that put this thing together.
I bought it 35 years ago for $250, been wrecked in the front. And of course it's laid around the weeds for the last 35 years, and I finally decided to restore it.
Did you notice they didn't over-restore it? This is kind of a dull type paint, and this is the way your car would look when you buy it. And I like a restoration like that. I don't like them over-restored. And the same thing goes for underneath. You'll see that there's some things that are not painted. That's because some of that suspension parts from the factory did not have paint on it. And it's nice to see it that way in the finished product. This was really a car that was in bad shape. But because it had the 396 engine in it, it was worth restoring. A car like this, in the condition you see it here, runs in the $150,000 range, and I doubt seriously that you could buy this car for him for $150,000.
Welcome back to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Auto Expo. Let's take a look now at the OPG Stock Class. Here's Rick Carlson.
1969 Chevelle Super Sport. The first year they made some changes, none of the vent glass, that type of thing. But there are changes to this car. I don't know what all he's done. Let's ask Al Fletcher.
Done an all-frame restoration. Every nut, bolt, line has been replaced on the car. I got so far into it that I couldn't quit, so I put the best I could do into it. I'm a Chevelle nut.
When did you get your first one?
In 1969, when I came home from Vietnam, I had a car identical to this, and it ended up in Texas, and the fellow called me and needed some paperwork on it, and I sent it to him and got my blood flowing. So I ended up buying this car and doing it as close as I could get it to the one I had.
What's next with the car? Are you done with it, or is it ever done?
No, you're never done. It's always wiping, cleaning, showing, and it's a job to take care of, kind of like a kid in one respect.
Do you ever get to drive it?
Yes, I get it out and enjoy it, go to shows. I do not haul the car. I drive it where I go to, and that's my enjoyment and stuff.
Under hood, this is amazing. It's been restored. Factory inner fender panels. The air conditioning. Very few of the 350 horse Chevelles had air conditioning. The chrome is straight. It has the rally wheels, and they had two different style rally wheels. This is the one, in my opinion, is really the best style wheel. Bigger tires on the back, and you can see how smooth the lines are on this car. When they got rid of the vent glass, all of a sudden it just looked like a longer door. It is so smooth. You look at a 1969 Chevelle, I don't think I've seen one this nice in a very long time. Al Fletcher, a gorgeous 69 Chevelle Super Sport.
I deep staged it today just to see what had happened, and you can red light a monster truck on a normal tree.
Were you looking for him, or were you just waiting to feel a bump?
I was just waiting for the little bump.
Well, that's a first. My wife chasing him when I've been on duty.
Yeah, right.
I have chased him on duty. Yes, I have.
quite a flip there.
Yeah, you got the crowd response of the day, but I need to point out, these things aren't light. What's this thing weigh?
Oh, about 400 pounds. Yeah.
And you felt every bit of it, didn't you?
Every ounce of it.
When it comes time to define the term pony car, right here, 1965 Mustang GT. It is a black machine, and to be a black machine, it has to be straight, it has to be clean, and this one is. The 65 Mustang GT Fastback. You have spent a bunch of time getting this machine to this shape. It's gorgeous. The body is as straight as you could ever find.
Yes, sir. It's been a lot of time cleaning it and detailing it. Probably about 2 days just buffing alone.
Who did the body work, or have you had to have much done to it?
Young's Body Shop, Elon College, North Carolina, named Tom, and yeah, we redid the whole car.
Now, as a 4-speed car, it ends up with the clutch, the pedals. You've got more to take care of when you're driving this. Do you get to drive it much?
No, sir, we do not drive it at all. It's trailer queen.
It is a trailer queen. You look underneath it at some of the stuff, the undercarriage. How long did it take you from the time you got the car to put it in the condition it is now?
It took us probably about 2 years.
Okay. 2 years and a bunch of hours.
Yes.
Now, if you were going to go ahead and insure this, and you had to explain this to your insurance company, how much money do you insure this for?
$100,000.
Easily $100,000. It is one of the best examples of a Mustang GT, from the clean straight body, the rally wheels, red line tires, the GT badging, and then the interior, and this is unique. It has the pony interior. You can see the trim, and it's a leather seating. But when you look at the steering wheel, there's the rally package. I think the early Mustangs, the weakest area that you had was the trunk. It's neat, it's straightforward, it's clean, but when you had a Mustang, by golly, you traveled light.
The O'Reilly Auto Expo and Motor Mania brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, home of the professional parts people. By Summit Racing Equipment, the world's speed shop. And by Hallmark. Hallmark, built strong for the way you work and play. Welcome back to beautiful and picturesque Tennessee. We're continuing our coverage of the OPG Stock Class. Let's check in with Rick Carlson.
In 1968, Plymouth came out with the Roadrunner, but they added a little more premium style. They put together the GTX. The GTX, an interior package, a better trim package, and in most cases a 440. You could still get the Hemi in it, but this beautiful 68 GTX has a 440. Jim Buchanan.
Yes, sir.
You've had this car for a while.
Ordered this car in '67 when the 68s first came out. Went down to buy a Chevelle, to be honest with you, and the dealer and I couldn't get along, and I went out to the Chrysler Plymouth place, and it just come out with the GTX for 68 with the new body style. And a guy named Jim Ramsey used to race a car called the Tennessee Twister, and he said, well, let's just order one. And we ordered it with no power steering, no brakes, no power brakes, no air conditioning, just all motor.
So you actually ordered it. Were you at the dealership? Did they call you when it got there? I remember my first car that I ordered. I was anxious.
December 15th, it came in on a Saturday morning, and I was so disappointed because the shop was closed, and it meant he couldn't get the car till Monday. So Jim Ramsey took it out to his brother's service station, Jerry, on the other side of town, and checked all the fluids in it on Saturday morning, and I got to get the car so I could drive it for the weekend. We went, got out and went to Myrtle Beach in it and all this sort of thing, and vacationed in it. It had 72,000 miles on it in 1975, and right now it's got just turned 100,000 miles, so you can see it's not been driven hardly any.
Now, the question, you've had it this long, what happens when you tire and get tired and say, what do we do next?
Well, we have two daughters. We have Becky and Crystal that both live in Washington, D.C., and this is a fight. Who gets the car? So I kid them all the time and say, well, I'm going to give it to the Salvation Army. But they're fighting over who's going to get the car someday.
This GTX, as original as you can find, a member of the family, and they treat it just like that.
A Monte Carlo, 1972, beautiful blue paint job, and a 402 engine. Now, I hate to be ignorant, but I don't know what a 402 engine is, and we'll have to find out.
Well, the 402 was the replacement for the 396, as you're probably familiar with, in the late 60s, early 70s. This car we actually found in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Came from Knoxville. I bought it from the original purchasing family, and I actually bought it to resell. And my wife decided she wanted me to fix it up for her to drive, and so that's what we did. Fixed it up, and she drives it everywhere we go.
Is it all of the been restored back to originally the way it came from the factory?
Everything except the color. We changed the color on it, went with a little bit brighter, more brilliant blue. And then I have the 15x8 rally wheels on it instead of the original 15x7. But other than that, everything else is stock. We take it on trips and get 16, 17, 18 mile a gallon running with air conditioning and running slightly above the speed limit.
Well, Bob started with a real nice original car, and of course that makes it easy to really have a fantastic restoration, and they went to great pains to do it. You can see all the stickers are in here. Everything's correct the way you would have bought this car right off the showroom floor, even to all of the colors down inside. And I like it. It's kind of a satin, you know, it's not that real bright shiny paint. This would have been more like the factory would have actually produced. But you're looking under here, and that's the way you'd have raised the hood at the dealership and seen this car. Inside it's got the beautiful black Naugahyde bucket seats. I always loved that shifter, the way I remember those. The handle was kind of like an aircraft control. Of course, back into the trunk we see all the original type covers that came. This was kind of an inexpensive trunk interior. They, you know, at the factory, they weren't big on putting expensive materials in the trunk because they were just where you put your groceries or your luggage or whatever. Just wanted to protect it a little bit. And Bob hasn't changed that. It's just exactly like it was. And I like to see him that way because this gives the younger generation an idea how you actually purchased a car off the dealer showroom floor in 1972.
You've seen it. Everybody's looked, and we've oohed and we've awed, and the winner, Garry Arnold and his 1965 Corvette. Garry Arnold, I mean, hours and hours. Can you total the amount of effort and sweat that went into that?
Too many.
And does it ever end, or is it never ending? I'd say battle, but it's a love taking care of it.
Always doing something to it.
To obtain a copy of this program, simply log on to masterstv.com.